So I had this idea, right? So I was driving in the car, listening to my human design recordings, and then I started to think about you. Obviously, I do human design in amongst heaps of other things, so I'm always obsessively like reading or listening to the next thing and having kind of uh going into the next level of like what things mean. I'm always thinking about consciousness, not just thinking about it, but feeling it. And like, what is the filter of consciousness, which is why human design fascinates me, because I'm like, this feels like a really on on target specific thing of looking and analyzing how we are filtering. And you only can really understand that through experimenting and feeling it and talking to people about their experiences and just being in the world. So with that being said, I was studying an aspect that came up in your chart and I was really interested in it. It was the variables. I'm always going through different people's charts, but obviously I'm super connected to you, my sister. We do have amazing conversations. I find from my perspective, but maybe it's my uneducated perspective that enjoys them. Because
No,
I
we have great.
I feel like I get validity with my like tuning into like weird shit and having no structure with how I receive it. And then when I talk to you and you're like, yeah, this is what the books say. And I'm like, I see like a merging here. And it's very validating to like have it come from both sides. It also comes up because in your chart, one of the things that like we connect over is that we have a joining channel, which is the 12 and the 22. And the aspect of the 22 that you have is the gate of grace. And it's very prominent in your unconscious. It's like it's what people see in you that you may not even recognize in yourself. But I think over time, I raise it a lot because you give people the space to you. It's like it's all about good graces. It's in the mundane plane of like letting the other person speak until they're exhausted before you say anything. It's like there are so many aspects in you that you're just so like kind and graceful. It's perfected grace. The aspect that you have is perfected grace. And it is just one of the biggest gifts on the planet, I think. So that's why I think that you are the best human that I've ever known. Because of our variables, both of us have similar, there's a little bit of difference. Um, so I don't want to go into the human design stuff too much, but both of us have a receptive way of gathering information. It's not just the words that you read on the page, but you sort of look beyond and around things to understand so much information that you can't even comprehend that you're gathering. You won't even realize it. You'll never know the depths of what you've understood. It's not just the words on the page, but you'll get a sense of like how the physical book got here and like how a person felt when they read it. And it's just like depths and depths and depths and layers beyond what we could possibly comprehend. So with that, the best way that we contribute is to not, because we don't know what we don't know, we don't know what we know, we don't know what we picked up, the jewels are actually plucked from us. Like someone else comes along, asks something totally random, you've got no idea that you even knew that, and you can suddenly say something to them that makes such a huge impact on, what they're looking for or their trajectory in life. Um, and that very thing may not even be anything that you care about or that I care about. It might just be like something so random we didn't even know we picked up. Um, 11:11. um,
You,
so and also what that means is that when we're giving information, like we go on this kind of wild goose chase. It's like you start at the beginning, you jump to the middle, you fluff over at the end, you go off on a divergent, and you're like, it's non-linear. It's very non-linear. And you can circle back, or you might get where you started, and you may never get where you started. But it's yeah, it's a very creative mind. But what I wanted to do then is come to you about your philosophical input. I don't know if I call it input, like perspectives, lessons, learnings, because you're doing a PhD. So now I want to shut up for a second and invite you, Megan Moss, my sister, most fabulous human in the whole world, and just all around cutie, to tell me a bit about yourself. um, and I will ask you just a bit about the origin story of philosophy and ethics. Just go back to like, yeah, a bit of your origin, a bit about like the pathway, maybe of like how you've gone with your education pathway, maybe, and then where you're at now. Um, Over to you.
Okay. Hi. I'm also super interested in adding all-round cutie to any bio that I've ever written. I
It's
think that's a
legit.
good way to introduce oneself. Okay. I've already forgotten what you've asked of me. But in honor of non-linear storytelling, I'll just start with what feels right and we'll figure out
I love that.
anything I missed from there.
Okay, I love that.
Um, Also, I laughed so hard when you said that because that's most of the feedback I get on my writing from my supervisor and from others is like, you've moved too quickly to this thing, or like, why haven't you written this like important component at the start? I'm like, well, I can't write the beginning until I know the ending. So that whole non-linear convoluted process is my brain, and you more than anyone helped me to figure out how to navigate that and embrace it. So
Mm.
that's also very validating for me. Yes, I am a current PhD candidate at Monash University here in Melbourne. So I'm just in my second year. I'm doing a project on the ethical and social implications of robotics and AI in agriculture. So I look at kind of food systems, and I look at emerging technologies, automated tractors, and like nitrogen detection technologies in soil, a whole host of things that I didn't know anything about when I started, a year or so ago. And I'm taking a virtue ethics approach. So, virtue ethics is one of the kind of main three schools of ethical theories in traditional Western philosophy. And it talks about cultivating virtue. So you're a virtuous person with a virtuous character. So you just kind of have formed habits and know what the right thing to do is. You're got a moral character. And so by having that as a framework, I'm hoping that I can explore this idea of like farmers being virtuous people and how they, with their virtuous character, could navigate what technologies we adopt or how we adapt them, or ones that we completely omit from taking on board. So that's what I'm kind of currently doing.
Mm.
Um, Origin story for something
Yeah.
I went straight into uni after high school and I did a Bachelor of Arts. I majored in philosophy, and I can actually never remember if I did a double major or if I did a major minor, and I couldn't possibly check. So I did a minor or double major in STS, which is Science Technology Studies. It's like the historical development of science and technologies, like how do we kind of the epistemology of science. I was always really interested in sci-fi novels, sci-fi films, so I found philosophy particularly interesting because it kind of reminded me of like dystopian or utopian kind of sci-fi landscapes. And it was like somewhere at the beginning of my undergrad where I was playing this video game, which is like, this is the famous origin story that I've told to lots of people. It's called Deus Ex, and it was basically just a kind of RPG game, kind of dystopian post human cyborg enhancement story. And I found it really captivating. I was really immersed in the story. And the whole arc of this video game is that, and this is the first time I had played a video game where the decisions that you make in the game determine the outcome. So the game had different endings based on what kind of decisions you made.
Mm,
And so I went through and I took that really seriously.
mm,
And at the end, you got a seat at this table to make these influential choices on what technologies they should use and what kind of society that they wanted to live in. And I just loved that. I was like, that's so cool. Like, I want a seat at this table.
mm,
And I also hated the options that the game gave you at the end. I was like, who even said that these were like the three options you get to choose from?
yeah.
So that was really what got me super interested in ethics of technology,
Mm,
and eventually what kind of got me hooked on bioethics, and looking at medical devices particularly. So that was something that I loved straight away. So I did that. That was my formal education. And then I kind of had a bit of a gap. I went and did a Master of Arts. And it's funny because you always talk about me being like the one that's got the formal education, but my education trajectory has been quite challenging, and I was never a very good student because um, I don't know, I didn't care at the time. It wasn't a priority. I didn't think I was capable. I was kind of just going along in the motion of going to uni because that's what lots of my friends did. And then at the end of my undergrad, realizing that I had kind of been hooked on bioethics and like this was
mm,
a possible pathway for me, I it was too late basically to salvage my grades. No one wanted to talk to me about honors, and everyone was like, "This is the end of the line for you. Go out and get a job elsewhere. Like the academy is not something that you'll be able to do." And that's something that a teacher told me. She was
mm,
just like, "You just don't." She's like, I'm sure you have skills, but like this isn't your skill set. This isn't your
mm.
wheelhouse. And that's fine. And like, just go and find something else that you like doing. And I think that was obviously in retrospect, that's kind of like hard to hear, but I think based on they didn't know me super well and the grades I gave, like that was probably, maybe that's probably a fair assessment, I think. Persevered because I just thought that I could do, and I did want to do. So then I did this Master of Arts to try and kind of catch up and get my grades and learn about some skill sets I would need. And then that eventually got me into the Master of Bioethics at Monash, which was kind of the dream at the time. And it was the Master of Bioethics that I was really able to like decide that this is exactly what I want to do, that I was capable. I kind of missed some of the skills that I need, but that didn't mean I couldn't learn later in life.
Mm.
Um, and that I didn't have something to offer. And now it's because I think I had quite a long trajectory to my PhD, and because I didn't find it super easy, that I think I have a lot of things to offer that people that
Yeah.
have had a more traditional pathway don't. So that, yeah, and then that brings me to my PhD. So
Yeah.
did that cover most of the
Yeah, amazing. And like it makes
most
me
of the
think
questions?
of various things uh in your human design chart as you go through that journey. Because well you have there's some elements of you, but there's also, we talk about this within the chart that we have these interactions with people. Not only do we have a set of mechanics. Like those mechanics interact with one another. Not only that, but like the collective influences that are going on. So it's interesting that conversation that comes out with that teacher. It's like, because one of your strongest aspects in your chart is actually provocation, to provoke spirit. And it's interesting that interaction, whatever their role was in that, actually kind of provoked you into spirit. Like it provoked your spirit to say, hey, hang on a second, like actually I'm not gonna be cut out of the race like that. There's also other elements in your chart which are to do with the gate is called the marrying maiden, and it's about progression over time and like building reputation and building into success over the course of your life. You also have as your personality sun, it's gate 45, and it's called gathering together, canvassing. And I see that, or I interpret it kind of, remember the show, God, I'm not going to remember what it's called now. It was that one that had Kevin Spacey in it. It's about the politics. And he's like a whip. Do you remember that? I don't know if you ever saw it.
Oh, House of Cards.
House of Cards.
Mm.
So that's a role in politics. It's called a whip. So like you go around canvassing whether people who are undecided through educating them. So people that haven't picked where they're going, you actually like are pulling together, gathering people through educating them when they're not decided. And like there's all of this stuff going on, which kind of really pulls into this story about like this kind of underlying motivation that you have, that it's like that pulls you into virtue ethics. And so with that being said, I was really curious, as I always am, and this morning I was like actually nervous about talking to you because I'm like, I don't know what the fuck idea this is. I don't know about this idea yet. Like something's happening, and then I'm like, this could be a serious.
Same.
But what did you say? Sorry, I went over the top of
I
you.
said same.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. All right, there's a delay. You go ahead.
Right. But part of my pathway is like trusting the process. It's like, okay, so you've agreed to come here. You didn't say no. I'm like, I wonder what this is. And of course, I was procrastinating, or just I don't like to call it procrastinating, but the energy was it was in my mind going, you need to write a few notes. You need to write a few notes. And of course, I sat down at the computer 2 hours ago and or 2.5 hours ago, and about 10 minutes before the call, I started writing a couple of notes. And it started opening up some stuff that I'm actually really interested to ask you about. So, one of the things that I wanted to just clarify, I guess, was like under the umbrella of philosophy, there's lots of different areas under philosophy, right? So ethics is one particular part of philosophical areas, right?
Yeah, yeah, it can be like one interpretation. Yeah, yeah.
Um, I've got a list here: metaphysics, epistemology, ethics, logic, aesthetics, the study of like beauty and art and taste, uh, political philosophy, philosophy of the mind, philosophy of science, philosophy of language, existentialism. Would you say that these are unique areas, or do they kind of blend in, or are they categorized differently?
It can be all of the above. I
Mm,
suppose they're usually more defined schools. So like someone who does metaphysics will usually do that kind of philosophy. I do like applied ethics. So I deal usually with less abstract themes and more I'm trying to like apply them to real world
mm,
like technologies or things or people or whatever. But there's a lot of um, like aesthetics can be something that it can kind of be in a few different realms. And like I've been reading a lot about aesthetics in the last few weeks because with like farming, people think about it as something that can cultivate your virtue. Um, and so it's kind of like this practical focal practice, like something tangible. But other people see that it has value because there's aesthetics involved in it. So it's like it creates beautiful landscapes or it kind of cultivates the wilderness in a way that is like something that has value, visually, but also kind of instrumental value. So yeah, there can be overlap, and I think more and more people are trying to weave certain areas together. But yes, otherwise, traditionally, they're kind of the distinct schools.
Okay. So when I was digging further, so with virtue ethics, sorry as I try and work out what it is that I'm asking, because I'm just poking around. I'm just in here poking around, looking for threads.
Please.
So your PhD will uses virtue ethics as a framework, but you create a set of like virtues. Tell me about this. That
Yeah.
so you
Yeah,
create
so
a set
there's
of virtues that can be applied to farming.
yes. So there's quite a few different branches of virtue ethics. And I'm looking at an Aristotelian virtue ethics. So Aristotle, that most people are quite familiar with as a prominent figure in ancient Greece. So he's kind of got like the virtue ethics Bible, right? That's how, and then it kind of all goes off in different directions in for Western tradition. But there's also lots of Eastern tradition of virtue. It's like Confucian,
Mm.
for
We're
example.
talking about
So
the
I'm
Tao Te Ching, the Tao
yes,
Lao Tzu, because I think Lao Tzu and I was
love
meant
that.
to look this up and I forgot. Confucius are like buddies or something. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, we should talk about that. So yeah, I'm doing Aristotelian virtue ethics. So there's kind of a list of virtues that Aristotle describes in the Nicomachean Ethics, which is one of his kind of like central bodies of work that people refer to. And through like history and contemporary virtue ethics, we've kind of got a whole other host of subsets of schools. And so sometimes people will say, well, there's just like these main kind of virtues, which everyone has to abide by. Other people say, well, maybe we have role virtues. So maybe depending on what kind of roles we have, we need to focus on particular virtues. Other people will say there's a hierarchy to them. So maybe like temperance is the most important virtue and prudence is less so, where other people say they're non-hierarchical. So we just need to all kind of pursue all the virtues.
Mm,
So in my research, there's kind of this well-established literature and history that links virtues and farming and agriculture. And so there are lots of virtues that people have spoken about, but it's not, I mean, in from what I've read, a lot of the literature are not, it's not from like a philosophy tradition. So it's not been the main focus, or it's not done in a way that um, is like necessarily coherent. Like I myself don't think that that's important. Like philosophers love coherency. They're like, oh, it's super important that things are cohesive and that you are able to apply things kind of in this consistent manner. But I think life and people are a little messier than that.
mm.
And that's not something that I necessarily hold to the highest value. Um, whether that's good or not, I don't know. But
Well, it's perfectly you. Again, that is part of your chart. I'm gonna have a look of where it is. Yeah, it's in the head center. It's gate 47. It's actually your unconscious sun, and it's the gate of rationalization, but it opposes a gate which you don't have which is I think it is the gate of confusion. And so confusion actually it's like kicking up the dust to get the jewel. Like it's like we need confusion to break through into new areas of realization. And I come across people on the internet all the time who like are really scared of being confused. But anyway, sorry to interrupt you, but that was just like that's right on the money for you to say that it's actually so perfect because you you get that aspect that, confusion and chaos is not, it actually breeds innovation or breeds the next thing, or how are we going to develop our realization of the world. So carry on. Where were you up to?
Um, yes. So basically I'm kind of bouncing off some like main texts who have brought up virtues, and then I am coming in and I'm kind of like assessing them, like do I think that these are central virtues for this, like for the farmer as this kind of primary stakeholder that I'm picturing. Um, and yeah, from there I'm kind of coming together with a list. So it's not necessarily like a novel list,
Mm,
but it's just going in and kind of reassessing it, regrouping it, reorganizing it to some degree, because there's a lot of overlap. Um, there's this um, philosopher, Rosalind Hursthouse, like very, very famous contemporary virtue ethics figure. And she has this paper from the 80s about kind of interpreting virtues. So we've got like the virtues themselves, but then we've also got spheres of human experience. And so the spheres of human experience are kind of like the situations that we are put in, or that we find
mm,
ourselves in, the context. And
mm,
then within those situations, we can kind of exhibit or develop virtue. And so I found that very like very appealing.
mm,
And I think that applying that to kind of contemporary understandings of virtues in farming, actually what people are pointing to most of the time are spheres of human experience. And so they think that the virtues that are kind of central to farming, there's actually a lot less than people have kind of explored, because I think we can kind of regroup them, and by regrouping them, we can more definitively understand them and explore them and see how they might be cultivated,
mm.
etc.
With a set of virtue ethics, how does that, because I know I had a misunderstanding, not, yeah, I think it was a misunderstanding maybe, like a little while ago. I remember you gave us a little presentation, and I was thinking that, or I had the idea that a set of virtue ethics was almost like policy in some ways, like to say that these are standards of, you know, almost like the Ten Commandments, like thou shalt not this, thou shalt not that, you know, do this, do that, but it's far less prescriptive than that. Is that be fair to say? Like, and would a set of virtue ethics inform policy and things that are more prescriptive, or how does it play with, yeah, actual legislation and things?
Yeah. So it is there's another kind of like school of ethical theories, which is deontology, and that's your kind of your rules-based like actions, or so you're like human rights is a deontological framework. So you've got particular like kind of absolutes that you should or shouldn't try to do. Like, so you've got a particular duty of other people not to act a certain way. And then you have a right for people not to interfere with certain actions. So virtue ethics is, although you've got the framework of the virtues, it's meant to be so that um, if you are a virtuous character, you have cultivated your experience and your intentions, and everything is kind of aligned. So you're always working in harmony with your feelings and your thoughts. So it's not just focusing on logic and rationalization, but it's also like, how does it make you feel, and your emotions and your kind of,
Mm,
yeah, all of those kind of intersecting components of being a human. And it should be the case that if you are this virtuous character, you'll be able to figure out what the right thing to do is.
mm,
Um, so and that could be that, you act differently across like a bunch of different contexts. So it's not always a prescriptive
Yeah.
kind of response. Um, in policy, it's really interesting. One of the faculty members at Monash has written quite a lot on this, and is the work I'm most familiar with. It's one of my teachers in the Master's of Bioethics. But he talks about the doctor physician kind of virtue, and that how this can create obligations for policy. And I guess this is also something that I'm trying to think about and perhaps replicate in my own project, is just thinking about, well, if we have these kinds of people and these kind of characters that we think are able to navigate particular circumstances, and if the system that they're in doesn't allow them to do that, well, then by figuring out what kind of character these people should have and how they this can create obligations for the kind of systems that they sit within. So that can be policy and that could be legislation, and like keeping people accountable to certain extents. Yeah, so it's a very interesting kind of aspect of it.
Where I think I'm trying to go, I'm not sure yet what's coming, like, but there's actually something to do with human design and this philosophy and the future of humanity that I'm like kind of getting to. So I'm trying to like push us out to an edge, and we're gonna keep going.
Is it
So,
because we're trying to get rid of farmers because we're moving to post, what is it, like the stage of the next generation where we won't grow our food? Like,
that's definitely not my intention, but that might be what's happening. Um, so when you mentioned it just then too, so when we answer when within virtue ethics, there is this idea of wrong and right. And like, is that a fair statement?
it's we use that language a lot, like, and I use it too, but it has less of a focus on right and wrong than the other schools, I would say,
Mm,
because it wants to focus on cultivating character, and then
mm.
the characters are able to navigate kind of like what's morally permissible or impermissible, and then as a result of that, we can kind of think about things in terms of right or wrong. But
So
it is less of,
I was kind of connecting that to language in human design, which talks about correctness or not self. And I was kind of connecting rightness to be interpreted as being true to personal nature. Like, so, so that a person doing the right thing would be not necessarily yeah, it's kind of like what you're saying. It's like building that character, and it might change depending on the situation that you're in. Um, but I guess yeah, I don't know if I've said that correctly. Maybe I just paused there for a moment. But yeah, so look, is that right to you, or what do you think about that? Like that the interpretation of being right might be, or rather being wrong might be untrue to personal nature. I'm kind of jumping ahead.
like, perceived by others, do you think? Like,
Well, it
the
has
right
to,
thing that you think to do.
okay, so I have done a bit of a jump. I was like, well, because in human design, I guess, there are aspects of amorality. So what is more, because I guess I was looking at different philosophical areas as well, and things like existentialism, which is about individual freedom and choice and things. And within a bunch of different philosophical things, I was looking, uh, what is this? Yeah, I don't know. So yeah, maybe I picked up on words in existentialism like freedom of choice, individual freedom. So and this is human design too, a person knowing themselves very intimately as a filter of consciousness, and doing what is aligned to them. and then this idea of some behavior being virtuous or not, which might be the case, but having doing something oppressive or so this is what I listed. Like if a person is being authentic to themselves by being oppressive, which is which may be the correct filter of consciousness for them. Because if we're thinking of all of us collectively as a whole, and consciousness is, we're like studying something, us, whatever this whole construct is like an exercise in consciousness working out what form and what filter works best to show all of the different aspects of whatever we are, like of the soul of we haven't really gotten to the bottom of it, but it's like it's at the core of it, like and it's like the essence of life, or the like love, if you can call it love. Like what is love? Love torn apart
The
and
stardust.
huh? Say it again.
The stardust.
Yeah,
The
stardust.
stardust within.
We're stardust. um, okay, so if all aspects need to be represented, like yin and yang, dark and light, black and white, so to have virtue, we need to have like the opposite of that as well, because it doesn't exist without its the balancing component. So, what do you call something that's not virtuous? Is it like, yeah, what's the opposite of virtue?
But
Vice? Okay, so
yeah, so it's yeah, because I think I think it's a little different because the balance is the virtue at least like within this school because we usually with virtues in an Aristotelian sense we think about virtues as a mean. So we have like a spectrum, and too little is a vice and too much is a vice, and then virtue's in the middle, and that's the balance. So
mm,
rather than it being like virtue vice,
mm,
virtue's the balance in the middle where you've got just the right amount of like rashness and cowardness. And
mm.
so that cultivates the virtue. And I don't know enough to say whether there's like anything that's about the like requiring vice in order for virtue to be seen. Like I don't think that that's the case, but I can't say definitively.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, how that's kind of interpreted. But it is like it is the case that if you're like this virtuous person and you've grown up in a super vicious society and everyone's super oppressive, or whatever else, um, you like you are not going to be seen by other people as being virtuous because everyone else has like their self kilter, right? Um, but that doesn't mean that you be like shouldn't be in pursuit of it, even though you're not perceived that way. But it's also it can be quite demanding, and like however easy or hard it is for you to develop virtue, you're not more or less virtuous than anyone else, or you're not like kind of rewarded for, despite all the odds, becoming virtuous, even if it's taken a lot more from you in this
Well,
kind of
how
like
do we
vicious
know that we're
society.
not,
Um,
there's not a reward?
I
I
don't know
mean,
if that helps at all.
yeah, there might be a reward beyond our knowledge. Like, is that
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but
like,
yeah, in that kind of school, it's not part of it, I would say.
yeah. So, I don't know where I'm going to go with that. So like, I like what you said though, what you shared, like that helps understanding like virtue as a balance. And it's like, um, what do I want to say? It's like getting out of my mind. It's like I'm floating around it, but it's um all right, give me a second. It's like the so it's all right. I probably need your help with interpreting the word integrity now that the word integrity is coming in. But like so a balancing a virtuous balance of what is what is best with consideration to like self, other, earth, individual, tribe, culture, experience. Like so it's like the melting pot of getting pushed into like the best possible choice based on all of the conditions. And you get pushed into the middle. And so even if yeah, I guess like with the knowledge of human design, when I look at different charts, there is so much programming and pressure and stuff on any unique individual. Then parts of them are like purely them, parts of them are getting kind of corrupted by influence, which is again not exactly wrong or right, it just is. Um, and so there will be some people that either have the influence or the personal pressure that they may never really like get into that middle ground, but they're like meant to live over here in Viceland. Um, and you know, and that it's not necessarily their duty or their purpose to become virtuous or get into the middle there, but that this collective study, which is kind of why people put their heads together and try and like map out this stuff, because even if an individual is living in Viceland, collectively we work out the middle ground based on all of our input and knowledge. Does that, am I saying anything?
Yeah, I think that's super interesting. I mean, that reminds me a lot of like the talks we've had about like Taoism and that like finding, like the importance of kind of conflict or like as in like, strength and weakness and finding
Mm,
the spot between the two, and that people have different roles to play, um so that there's kind of like a balance on par.
mm,
um but I don't think Aristotelian virtue ethics, the one that I'm most familiar with, goes that far, because
mm,
the at least I'm not familiar enough with the contemporary topics that might have taken it in that direction. Not that I think that maybe it couldn't be, but um, like Aristotle's kind of purpose for the virtues in ancient Greek was for the polis, right? So it's like to create a stable kind of society, where people participated in politics and like kind of ethics and law and moral all rolled into one thing. Um, so I think that idea of some people being outside of like the stable kind of polis was probably just beyond the scope of the project, and then that's probably dictated where it's kind of developed. But like I am probably closer to thinking what you're saying. I'm not committed
yeah.
in terms
No,
of
no,
like
fine.
personal
I'm not
philosophy.
committed. Who the fuck? I don't know what I'm saying. But it made me think of a few things. I'm just gonna look at my notes here as well. What did I write? Yeah, so I think I was already talking. I had a note here more that morality can be personal. So like that's how different people are going to come to different conclusions, potentially based on their experiences or like their perspective with things. So it's like also really important if we do connect it to farming and agriculture, is that the right people are in the right positions, basically, so that the I don't know, so that they're doing what is aligned and true to them. That kind of brings in that integrity that I was saying. It's like, so ultimately, you want a person who will consider the needs of everybody and that will consider the earth and like has all of this naturally built into them, that's their filter of consciousness, and we want to choose those people because we know that they're going to govern holistically or influence who holistically make those holistic choices rather than putting someone in a position who is highly corruptible or very individual, or yeah. So it kind of, then I connected that to a few things being like the argument for local systems and non-global systems, so that you've got people who are closer to understanding what the needs of a certain group of people are. And it also like is kind of why capitalism and colonialism is a problem, but capitalism is a problem because farmers might inherit their roles based on their families or geological, like different factors might put people into positions of farming, but not just farming, to do with the tech and the AI and whatever that is coming in that's sort of influencing a farmer. They are not necessarily like, how do you know that they're the right people to make choices around this, like the food system that we're all, every single person is relying on the nutrients to arrive to us so that we're healthy and so that we are our true selves, because nutrients are so important for us individually. So like it is a massive responsibility to like be, yeah, in this kind of like tech, ag, AI space.
Mm. I've got 2 points. I'll start with my second because
Excellent.
non-linear. Um, and this is something that I'm navigating it at the moment, and I've spoken to like my supervisor about these kind of two distinct claims around people who farm our food, right? Like, so do we have good people farm our food? Um, or do people farm our food and then become good? Like, is it something that is inherent to the process of cultivating food that makes someone good because they have all those kind of connections to the soil, to their community, to the earth, to the like what they're producing? Um, or is it that we need to have people who are kind of good in those roles because it is so important? And
Mm,
that's like the very um, common argument about why capitalism is horrific, colonialism is horrific, because you're having remote bodies, people groups who don't have a connection to place, who don't know, they don't have any expertise in like seasonal patterns or the history. And there's also like less, like people who are remote or removed from land are typically riskier because you're not really risk adverse if you're not going to, you're only going to see the benefits, i.e., all the money you're going to make, and you're not going to have to experience the risk, i.e., the fact that like next season's crop will fail or there'll be extreme weather events, all those kinds of real physical, tangible risks. So that's part of like what I'm trying to figure out. Also, with the acknowledgement that like in Australia, lots of our farming, we're a settler colonial country. So lots of our modern farmers, they have a history of like generational farming, but that's post-colonization. And so there is some kind of obligation to acknowledge the history and the dispossession and violence that occurred and continues to occur
mm,
around land rights in Australia. And that's a super important part of acknowledging that and figuring out how to weave that into these kind of conceptions of being virtuous, and how we go about continuing to produce food in this country specifically.
mm,
The other thing I was going to mention is it's a very common critique of virtue ethics is this idea of moral relativism, so that like well, if we're just focusing on being virtuous people, you'll just, conceive of what's virtuous for you and I for me, and they could wildly like disperse or conflict. And a lot of people see that as a problem. Whereas I think maybe you might actually see that as a strength. Just thinking back to like, the importance of having people in all kinds of roles to create that balance in society. Um, so
Well,
that's something I'll think about.
in terms of the development of consciousness, it becomes very amoral, because you're like, well, all things need to occur and exist. Oh God, now I'm going off. My brain's going off in so many different directions. One of them is like, that aspect, that going back to this beginning of this, when you're talking about that teacher and this kind of almost provoking moment, whether or not you really like clocked it as a provoking moment as a time, but like with distance and you telling that story, I can see like a chain of events that could have happened without you really being aware of it. And without that provoking player, there's no one to like, there's no response. So, there's bad choices and bad decisions can provoke or influence like like an opportunity for people to learn how to be virtuous and learn how to make better decisions. Because if we were all just like chill and relaxed and we knew everything, we wouldn't be learning anything or doing anything. Like we'd just be blobs. I don't know, no offense to a blob, but like because blobs are important too. Where else was I gonna go with that? Hold on, I got to think of what else it was. Um yeah, God, I can't remember where I'm going to pick this up from. Capitalism, one of the things I think is a problem is that often, because it's different people, I know we talk about roles in slightly different ways, but different people are playing different roles in terms of filtering consciousness. And the people who are actually born to be salespeople and to um, create money, because capitalism is actually in the human design chart. Capitalism's not a human thing. Humans made it for a reason. It's natural to some of us in some ways, but those people who are really strong at that aren't necessarily the same people who are really strong at fighting the good fight and being all about balance and responsibility. They're just like they're different people doing different roles. Um, so I'm not sure where I'm concluding with that either. But there were so many things that you said, and I was really pinging in my mind, and then it's all gone poof. But yeah, I've had a flat tire. I lost my tire. I love everything that you're saying.
Let it ruminate.
Oh, that's right. I wrote a note. It was here as a note. It wasn't. Okay, so I told you this that just yesterday. I think this week I had and I know we've been on the call for an hour, so I'll share this and then I'll get your last words. Um, so I shared this like my cat. I haven't allowed him to kill any animals. I let him sit in the garden and he'll watch the birds, but I'm very careful if he starts to jump up at them. I like make sure that he's not going to get anything. He'll catch little skink lizards and he runs them into the house, and I'm in there like a flash because I'm always watching Hovercraft Mum, and I pick up the skink and off he goes and nothing ever dies. Not that if I can help it. But this week, what happened was, because I'm really crazy. No, I'm not crazy. I'm just exploring things. I say to myself, um, there's a thing called dramatic new medicine, totally not anything we're talking about right now, but I have been bringing it up. It's like the idea that you can follow any health symptom, physical symptom, to a triggering event, which may have been an emotional trigger, which causes a symptom. And they relate to five basic biological laws. And so it's all very primal. So in a human or in an animal, it's the same primal biological laws. So I noticed that my cat, he has a sore tooth. I noticed it because of the way he was eating and he was a little bit off. And so I got to look at the tooth and I can see a little bit of redness. So I'm like, uh-oh, okay. So I also have this thought, like, sorry, I'm going really off topic. I have this like kind of growing, strengthening perspective on self-healing and that intervention could cause um, the ongoing symptoms or the ongoing problem without actually going back to the root cause. When it's someone else or something else, like being my cat and not being me, there's this whole other level of responsibility because I don't want, I can make a choice for myself not to go to have intervention, but I have to really be like, it's a risk for me to make that choice about my animal because I don't want to be wrong. I'm in an investigative phase and I can experiment on myself, but I don't want to put him at risk. But that being said, my belief system is really what, like, it is quite balancing towards that. I do think intervention could be more harmful to the process. So I'm allowing a window of time to experiment. So the cause that could be for the tooth might be that it's actually in Germanic New Medicine related to a bite conflict. So the inability to bite, to snap at an opponent and to bite the opponent, and thus creating a feeling of weakness. So in a cat, it's quite easy to see the circumstances that that would be happening. I'm not letting him catch birds. I don't let him eat the skinks. He's not allowed to bite the furniture. Like, he's constantly controlled from exercising animal behavior. I also haven't been playing with him quite enough. So I'm like, he needs a new toy to bite. I got him like some dental treats. I got him a chew toy with catnip in it. Like, and the other day I chose to let him play with and kill a skink. So I sat with him and I watched him. I thanked the skink for his service. I did everything I could. I sat there, I gave the skink Reiki. I was just like, I'm sorry. I like thank you for your sacrifice. Um, so that I could see my animal play and bite, even though it would have been an elongated torture event for the skink. So, um, that's my perspective of virtue. I don't know whether it qualifies and it's questionable, but I'm making the best decision that I feel like I can with all of my knowledge and awareness. Does that fit into virtue? Is that virtuous? Or can somebody not tell me that it is or it isn't? It's up to me.
Um, yeah, this is tricky. That's actually kind of pointed something that I am not sure about and I struggle with too, because like in the Aristotelian virtue ethics sense, um, it's kind of really hard to be virtuous. It's meant to be a lifelong pursuit. We're meant to be in pursuit of like a good human life. This like the term is flourishing, and that's like being virtuous, and but not easy to obtain. My question is also if you're super virtuous and I'm in pursuit of it, but I haven't achieved it, like arguably I wouldn't be able to make a judgment call on whether or not you're acting virtuous because I myself don't have that. So virtue ethics would probably point you to like an exemplar, someone who is recognizably virtuous and has flourishing, to kind of like guide you if you want advice on whether or not to let Logan eat a skink, or like whether they think you're on the right path or not. But because it is so contextual,
Mm,
and maybe it's kind of hard to explain all of your knowledge or all of the
exactly.
things
Mm,
going on that enter into your context and enter into your why you have particular intentions or whatnot. That it's tricky to articulate whether it's virtuous or not. And that is also commonly, like when we talk about virtues of like being a physician or a doctor, they're like, well, how can you figure out what someone's intentions are? You just kind of have to take them on face value, or use their actions and behaviors as kind of a proxy for their intentions, and maybe we can figure it out that way. But yeah, a long kind of
Mm,
answer to say I'm not too sure.
mm.
But I think the like the pursuit, I could say that you're certainly in pursuit of the virtue. Like
Yeah.
it's the intentionality. And also like so many people act without thinking, and they follow a prescription. And I think that that's one of, like, from a like research ethics perspective, and also just from like a personal perspective, I think that's one of the worst things. Like
Yeah.
you might happen to bring about good, but if you don't know what you've done, you don't know why you've done it, and you don't have like intention and consideration behind it, I find that hard to kind of align with.
Mm.
So that's my answer. And also Logan's the bestest boy king.
That's such
So
a good
he
boy.
should he should get little treats.
Well, he did seem happier that day. Like oh yeah,
And
it,
how's his tooth?
I haven't checked it today, but his mood feels like it has improved a little bit. So I'll be just keeping an eye on it. Um, yeah. And I will take him to a vet eventually. Like if I see it, if it inhibits his like, if it properly inhibits his behavior, but I'm just going to watch it for now and see what happens, and I'll give it a couple of weeks. Um, yeah. So, well, yeah, for me, I guess I know, yeah. Sorry, I say a lot of words and sometimes nothing comes out. Um, it kind of comes down to like, because I analyze the situation and I'm so familiar with myself through such in-depth self-study and study of people, I feel personally at ease, and in alignment with my choice. And I guess that's what I want to particularly help people with overall, is like making aligned choices for themselves, but being aware of what their behaviors are and who they are and what their characters and what it means for them. Because externally, I wouldn't assign if somebody was right or wrong, really. It can only come from within. Whatever is beyond us. I don't really like to call it God anymore. I experimented with calling something God before, but I really don't know what to call it anymore. Like in human design, it's kind of called the program. But we don't really know where the program comes from. The program is filtered through stars. Like the stars that we know and the planets are filtering, um, or like can be sources, but we still don't know what like is comes after that. So whether it's moral or virtuous to who and why, like um yeah, um it's broad, but I don't know where I should have a good closer, but I don't have no closers. Is there, because I just know that I want to be respectful of your time. So, what else have you got on? How you feel? Well, I feel like there's more we could say, but we might maybe like pick it up another time.
Part two. Um, yeah, I think that that's probably all. I had a thought,
Yeah.
but it's also escaped me.
Our
Um,
dumbass fucking right brains.
it just things just they just travel so quick. The thought is just so quick. It's
Yeah.
like in and out, and I'm like grasp at it. Nope, slipped. I had
Yeah,
a second thought that was about lunch, and now that genius thing has gone forever. But I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have eggs for lunch.
eggs for lunch. That's nice.
uh,
Yeah. So
back on my eggs.
I don't know what else. Like, yeah, I'm trying to think of if there's anything else now. There's going to be so many things that I think of later. Um, but yeah, those big ag people. Grr.
Yes, there's a lot to be said about it. A lot of change that can happen and should happen. Um,
But I'll randomly select a page from the Tao teaching and see what pops up here. Ah, nervous. That's way too much text. That's not one of the 30. It's not one of the 64. We're right. It's part of the foreword. Um, Something about creating photographs. So I'm going to do it again. All right. Had to be a long one.
should I
Okay.
do? I'm gonna do the same. I've got oh dear. I've got the Nicomachean Ethics here, so I'll do
Awesome.
the same from
Ah,
my book.
fun. All right. So, well, I'll just read it. It's number 38. So, truly good people are not aware of their goodness and are therefore good. Foolish people try to be good and are therefore not good. Truly good people do nothing, yet leave nothing undone. Foolish people are always doing, yet much remains to be done. When truly kind people do something, they leave nothing undone. When just people when just people do something, they leave a great deal to be done. When disciplinarians do something and no one responds, they roll up their sleeves and try to enforce order. Therefore, when Tao is lost, there is goodness. When goodness is lost, there is kindness. When kindness is lost, there is justice. When justice is lost, there is ritual. Now, ritual is the husk of faith and loyalty, the beginning of confusion. Knowledge of the future is only a flowery trapping of Tao. It is the beginning of folly. Therefore, truly great people dwell on what is real and not what is on the surface, on the fruit and not the flower. Therefore, accept the one and reject the other. That is all. I actually love that and
Very nice.
touched on so many things that we talked about to do with goodness and yeah, the opposition of things. Knowledge of the future is only a flowery
Mm.
trapping. And there's something in there about like truly good people do nothing, yet leave nothing undone. It's like the real yin philosophy of surrender and yield. Like so because we have well, linking it to agriculture and things like we plow the land, we farm the land, we like act, we dominate it, we overtake it, and we produce and we take. And then there's this, yeah, the, I don't know what word to say, moral good, just the goodness of it is like step back and stop like taking or acting, but like yield and surrender and like let things go slower and unfold, which again, it's like capitalism pushes us forward when we need to be not doing. So this is the not do revolution,
Mm.
the not doing revolution. All right. Did you find a
Love it.
page?
Yeah, it's the the scope and scale. Like, yeah, we can cultivate the land, we can plow, we can take resources, but we need to have a clear end and not over exploit. And then we also need to give back. We need to make sure that it's like the ebb and flow both ways. You know, we take from nature and we give back, and we just have to continue that cycle, which I don't think we're in currently.
Mm.
Okay, this is a random chapter. Okay, I don't know hang on, how long does this go? A few sentences. This is, what are we? Book 8, chapter 12 of the Nicomachean Ethics. Every friendship then is found in a community, as we have said, but one might put the friendship of relatives and that of companions in a separate category. Those of fellow citizens, fellow tribesmen, shipmates, and the like are more like friendships in a community because they appear to be based on a sort of agreement. One might put the friendship of host and guest into this class as well. Friendship between relatives, while it seems to have many species, nevertheless always appears to be derived from paternal friendship. A parent is fond of his child as being a part of himself, and children are fond of a parent as being their originator. That's kind of
Mm.
not related in any sense.
Yeah, everything's related.
Where does it, I'm like, where does it get to the siblings? Oh, here's one section. The friendship of brothers has the same qualities as that between companions, especially good ones, and in general that between people who are similar to one another. This is to the extent that they are more akin to one another and fond of one another from birth, and to the extent that they are more alike in character, being from the same parents and having been brought up together and educated similarly. And in their case, the test of time has been longest and most reliable. The qualities of friendship among other relatives are also proportional to their closeness of the relationship.
Oh, I was like, oh, I'm trying to do the heart. I can't do the heart thing. I see other people do it, and I'm like,
Oh,
oh, we made hearts.
cute. Everyone does this now. This is the new like
Oh, I didn't know.
heart.
What's that?
I
Oh,
think it's like
gee,
K-pop.
that's much easier.
It's a tiny, tiny little
Tiny
heart.
heart. Oh my God, I have a lot. I have a
I want a big
lopsided heart.
heart.
I have a
I would
very
like
big
to try and
thumb.
do it.
People, because
No.
I like it when the girls do that and they have really long nails and they're like ting. They have like no, long nails and long thumbs. But I've got short thumbs and short hands, and it just is like looks like a lump of coal.
You've made so many. I'd like to make one. No.
You should get ducks. I don't know what's happening. When will the
No.
technology progress so that it like creates any shape? You can be a dove. Doves.
Drawer.
I call doves. No, it doesn't work. I choose you,
Sailor
dove.
Moon transformation.
Oh, there was an interesting, well, it wasn't interesting in the local group chat. Some beautiful person wrote, "Hey, I'm looking for people to play Pokemon Go to if anybody is interested." Like, and because I don't know anything about Pokemon Go, but and then
Pokemon?
they Pokemon, and then they put like a number in there, and the thread went off. It had hundreds of people like all putting their number in that. She's like, I don't know if anyone plays this anymore. And they're like, yeah, we have meetups in Campbelltown every Monday night. They go play Pokemon
Whoa.
Pokemon. And I was like, that's really sweet.
Yeah, that Pokemon Go also sell all of your data as many companies do.
Yeah.
But
I mean, who doesn't? I mean, I know you're a Gemini. I'm also highly mercurial. I have lots of Gemini. You've got your Gemini sun, but I'm Gemini in like Moon and North Node and all these other areas. But like, so I had it's a highly communicative placement or planet. And so I had a tendency to sign up to every single new communications platform as they've popped up over the years because they'd be like, "Where's the new Facebook?" And then it would just be like, bam, bam, and like they wouldn't go anywhere, or I would never log in ever again. So yeah, I sold my soul to so many people long ago. It's like, anyway, yeah.
Yeah, we all have, intentionally or not.
Well, I really love talking to you about this stuff, like philosophical stuff, ethical stuff, taking it into spiritual stuff, life things, um, whatever else, however else. But I mean, yeah, I'm so biased. Like that, I mean, the thing is, I feel like you're the superior sibling, and that I gain more from being associated with you than you gain from me. But I like to think that we're definitely very connected souls, um, close close star proximity. Because it's very interesting to me, genetics, because I don't know how it happens, but and that some siblings don't get along or aren't so close, but how fortunate I feel to have you're one of the people that I can talk with the most without like I don't know. I can talk with you the most.
I feel the same way. We're on the same wavelength.
Yeah. Maybe we'll go away and I'd be really interested to see if anything comes up. I mean, maybe things, I don't know if anything new will come up for you in your thoughts.
Mm, I'm also interested. Um, yeah. I'm also, um, I mean, you do like this, you do a series where you talk to people quite often, or you've got like someone that you speak to quite frequently.
Talking about the
But maybe
mentorship?
this is something we could do.
Oh,
No, 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 like with your, for that you put on YouTube for
Marissa.
your, yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm always
Maybe this is
doing,
something,
yeah.
yeah, I know you're always doing stuff. You're busy. But maybe we could do it semi-regularly. I was like, we could go and have particular topics or something that we're interested in, and then we could bring our different perspectives.
I
But I
absolutely.
I was also just kind of thinking like when you're pulling on like that reading from your book, um, maybe that's something we could do. Like we could choose a particular passage, like out of a particular book that we like, or that is central to what we're doing or interested or whatever. And then we could both spend some time thinking over it,
Mm,
um, and then have a conversation about different interpretations or perspectives. Or we could just like do it randomly and be like, pull out a random section and then on the spot have a think about it. Um,
I
I
love
like that.
that idea. I love that idea. Um, yeah, I really love that idea. I think that's really clever, um, and interesting. My only thing would be like I do like to make notes, but I don't, what am I saying? I know that if I give myself a little task that I won't overinvest in like spending 12 hours to research it. So I just want if we do that, you
Mhm.
need to self-contain yourself to like just to don't overinvest. Does that make sense? Not that like just don't burn yourself out with more
Mm.
tasks.
Well, no, I think it could be good because I guess I'm interested in hearing like what you find interesting or like your perspective on things. But I also think it could be like a cool way to kind of think about things in like terms of patterns or like the
Mm.
relationships like from different schools of thinking or contexts or whatever, and like to
Yes.
see similarities or differences, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Because
Pretty
that's,
cool.
I think what I was, yeah, what I was trying to say or what was going on in my mind is like that our connection has this kind of little yin yang thing. Like we're super similar in many ways, can talk to each other, but what now it's already escaping me again. Um I think I'm like it's like the science and the spiritual type sort of sides. Like so sometimes we don't always agree, although most of the time we always have open space to converse about things without like buckling down on anything. But I like the science, spiritual sides of our conversations. So I think that's a great idea. So out of the teaching or whatever or any other text, just whatever,
Whatever
any
you, yeah,
proposed
whatever you like.
text.
Yeah,
I'd like to
yeah.
dive into this one too one day, mysticism and the new physics.
Mhm.
It's good.
The longer project of this would be like book club, where we have a particular book,
Yes.
and we can go through it. But maybe we start with less ambitious
Yeah,
passages.
I know a group of witches that do that regularly, and I did one for reclaiming witchcraft where we read a book and did a chapter a month, I think it was. But they have also done Tyson Yankapora's books like Sand Talk and I've
Mm.
gone through read Sand Talk and talked about that. So I love that idea. That's a great idea. Oh my God, that's so cute. We can have a
Yeah,
book
cool.
club. Yes. Um,
Yes.
all right. Well, I
Alright.
feel like I might
Yeah.
let you go do your day now.
We should just do that. We should have a book club. And then if it turns into something that requires note taking and discussion, we do that. We can do that later. But we should at least have a book club between ourselves. It seems silly that we don't.
Yeah, it's so silly.
So
Silly.
sorry.
All right. I love you so much. I'll end the recording. How about that?
I love you. Thank you for
All right.
inviting me.
No, you're the
Yes,
best. Oh, hang on. Wait a second.
you're the best.